Hi and welcome to this video which will explore everybody's favourite question, the dreaded poetry from other cultures section. Here are its aims. Explore an example exam question. Quickly analyse and annotate an unseen poem. Understand how to structure an exam answer. Give tips and advice for the exam. It would be a good idea to have a copy of After the Deluge to hand for the comparison element of this question. On the subject of the question, here's a typical example. Read the poem Not My Business on the page opposite. Refer to the poem After the Deluge from your pre-release booklet. Write about what the poem in Not My Business tells you is happening in the country he writes about, how the writer uses language in Not My Business to make the poem memorable, how the thoughts and feelings of the poet in Not My Business compare with those of the poet in After the Deluge from your pre-release booklet. Not My Business is unseen and would be printed inside the exam paper on the opposite page from the question. After the Deluge should be familiar to all of you as it's in your pre-release booklet. Look again at the wording of the question. 2 bullet points are asking you about the unseen poem, and they're asking about your understanding of it and the use of the poet's language. The 3rd bullet point asks for a comparison between this unseen poem and one from your pre-release booklet. This one asks you to focus on the feelings of the poets in the 2 poems. Here you'd be looking for connections between the poems, sometimes differences, sometimes similarities. There is more emphasis on the unseen poem, so your skills with analysing new poems will be tested. The videos on the channel on the 8 pre-release poems show how to do this. The examiner is interested in your thoughts, opinions and responses about both poems, so you must compare them at some point in your answer. The question has been structured this way for both foundation and higher for the last few years, and there's no reason to think it will change this year. This question often scares candidates. Don't be worried about it. At the end of the day, if you're using quotes, you're making points, and you're giving your personal opinions on the poems, you can't actually be marked down for it. The poem question is difficult for the majority of students. There are many ways to structure the answer. The methods given here are only 2 solutions, and they may not suit everyone. However, they are the simplest ways to answer the question. If you've been taught a different technique, please structure your answer in the way that you feel most comfortable with, as long as you analyse the unseen poem and compare both poems together. The points highlighted about the unseen poem and for comparison between both poems are examples only. You should not expect yourself to cover the same amount of points in just 45 minutes. My best advice is simply to write what you can in the time allowed, making sure you cover all 3 bullet points. Here's an example of an unseen poem. It's written by a Nigerian poet who often criticises the Nigerian government. As the intro says at the top, this has often landed him in trouble with the authorities. In the next section, I'm going to highlight in gold what I learn about what's going on, and I'm going to highlight in red any language I find memorable and interesting. This is what the question asks for. It might be an idea to pause the video at this point so that you can read the poem yourself and even spend 5 minutes making your own notes so that you can compare in a minute. Right, here come the points I would highlight, and I'll go through them quickly to save time. I make no apologies for this, because we don't want the video to be too long, and you only have 5 to 10 minutes to do the same in the exam before you'll need to get writing. Remember that you won't have to mention everything. What's said here are examples for guidance only. First, here's what's going on in gold. The first 3 stanzas tell stories about the normal Nigerians who were taken away by the authorities. Akani and Chinwe could apply to anybody. Everyone is at risk. Each stanza explains something nasty that happened to them: violence, kidnap, and kicking someone out of their job. More detail is given about violence, disappearance, and the loss of job and status. No reasons are given for any of these actions by the government. Negative language is used. This voice in the poem ignores what is going on and doesn't care. It represents those people in society who don't stand up for others. It's repeated 3 times for emphasis. Finally, the person who does not care meets the same fate as the others, showing that nobody is beyond the reach of the violent government. Second, here's the memorable language, some of which I would comment on. Beat him like soft clay. A violent image which compares the victim to clay to give the impression he's been beaten to the point where all his bones are broken. Stuffed him down the belly of a waiting jeep. This personifies the jeep as some kind of hungry monster which devours the people. The question mark indicates the rhetorical question posed by the uncaring voice in the poem, and it's repeated 3 times to show that some people don't care what happens as long as it's not them and they have food to eat. The poet is criticising this attitude. They. This means the leader's henchmen. They are faceless, shadowy and nondescript, which makes them scary and intimidating. Booted and dragged are 2 more violent words which convey the brutality of the leader's men. 1 neat sack for a stainless record. The alliteration here is ironic because the woman is quickly and efficiently sacked from her job despite having a perfect reputation. The word sack may also suggest she's put in a bag and taken away. And then one evening, a change of tone here from uncaring to shock and surprise. All of a sudden, it's the person who doesn't care who receives an unexpected visit. Froze my hungry hand. He's shocked, gone cold. The metaphor conveys his fear. It's ironic he is eating yams when they arrive, because that is all he used to worry about. My bewildered lawn. His lawn is personified as having its own emotions, which reflect his own confusion and disbelief. Waiting, waiting in its usual silence. This is a menacing last line. The repetition of waiting builds tension, letting us imagine what will happen next, and the sibilance of the last two words ends the poem with a hiss, reminding us of the evil of the leader and his men. The third bullet point asks for a comparison about both poets' feelings. They both write about their feelings towards the way their leaders govern their country, so this is what I'll focus on. In the unseen poem, the leader is evil and violent. Here's an example: dragged Dan Laddie out. In After the Deluge, the leader is corrupt. Here's a quote: crack the bullion market open wide. Both poets present their leaders here in a negative way. They also say they are both greedy. In Not My Business, this is shown by stuffed him down the belly of a jeep. The jeep violently eats up and consumes the people. In After the Deluge, the leader is wasteful and greedy with money. He fed a pound of caviar to his dog. The people are treated badly in both poems. In Not My Business, people are victimised and disappear. One of them was taken away when it says off to a lengthy absence, so he's not seen for ages. In After the Deluge, people are oppressed and ignored. The poet says, no worse a mortal man than the rest, meaning he treats the people as meaningless, seeing himself as their god. Both leaders are absent from the public eye, but in different ways. In Not My Business, he sends others to do his work. They came one night, makes you imagine his shadowy agent doing his dirty work. In After the Deluge, the leader is also not around. He hides away from his people for security, shown by the quote, he knew his native land through iron gates. Finally, both poets express their feelings about the future of their country, but in different ways. In Not My Business, the poet says ignore the situation, it will happen to you as well, as the jeep and they come for him in the end as well. Waiting on my bewildered lawn shows this. In After the Deluge, the poet is hopeful about the future, saying the leader will pay one day for the way he rules. He scratches life from earth, just like everyone else. Here are two ways you could structure an answer to this question. Remember again that you shouldn't expect to cover the number of points made in this video, they're just examples. Method 1. First, a very brief introduction which mentions what each poem is about and who the poets are. Number 2, a full detailed analysis of the unseen poem, which covers bullet points 1 and 2. Thirdly, a detailed comparison of both poems covering bullet point 3. Or, method 2, with an introduction the same as above, but then a full detailed analysis of the unseen poem covering bullet points 1 and 2, which makes relevant comparisons to the pre-release poem as you're writing. Bullet point 3. I would suggest to you that if you want to avoid getting confused and you want to keep your answer simple and straightforward, follow method 1 and use the bullet points to help you structure your answer in that order. Let's finish with the essential points to remember. First, identify which features of the poem you need to focus on, and the question will clearly state these. Read the unseen poem, annotating as you go. Annotate for language, tone, structure and feelings. Do the same for the poem from the booklet. Use the bullet points to structure your answer. Give a full analysis of the unseen poem and a thorough comparison of both poems. Use quotes at all times to back up your points to guarantee that you'll get a C or above. Explain their effect on the reader. Include what you learned about the poem's cultures because the question will probably ask for this as well. Be aware of time. You should spend no more than 45 minutes on this question. Thanks very much for watching. As I've already said, an analysis of all 8 pre-release poems are on our channel already, plus others to help you revise for your exams. The very best of luck.